thank you all for coming. I know it was a tough decision to pull yourselves away from the State of the Union. I've known Mark for a long time because we both lived in the downtown LA. He was in the Arts District and I was at the brewery, but there was a lot of mixture between the two. And even though I knew him for a long time, I didn't really know everything that he did down there. And some people up here know his ceramics, and some people know his charity and nonprofit work. But we're going to get into all that and explain how they all sort of work together. Someone said to me the other day that Mark is the angel of the desert up here, that he is supporting so many people and so many causes and the whole art scene here. So whoever he is, he's helped everybody, so let's welcome Mark Walsh. All right. So, Mark Walsh, you can jump in at any time. You were born in Clearwater, moved to Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
What age?
I was 13.
And how was that? Going from nice, warm Clearwater to
cold it was culture shock, and I was enamored with all the rocks. I almost became a geologist because in Florida there's no stones or anything, but in Connecticut we had a huge rock outcropping and forests everywhere. That's also something we didn't get in suburban Florida, was the vast forest of New England.
1984, you moved to Los Angeles.
Yes.
Right? And then since then, you were there most of the time. You did a brief stop in Pomona,
mm-hmm.
and then you landed up here.
Right.
So that is the big chart. All right. So the 1980s, you were in high school mostly, right? You start not for the whole time.
I graduated in 81.
Obviously.
Yeah, late 70s, early 80s was high school.
So tell us about the work you started doing in high school, when you started doing ceramics.
Well, in high school, I was introduced to ceramics. It was a small school, 800 students in Redding, Connecticut, and which is in southern Connecticut. And I was introduced to just ceramics and making stuff from scratch out of clay. And I spent most of my time doing that. Any free classes, instead of going home early or going to study hall or something, I disappeared into the ceramic studio during my lunch break and everything. Would make all these fantastic things. It never occurred to me to make a pot or some vessel. It was mostly just aliens and strange forms and sea creatures and lots of colors. Definitely no holding back with the palette there. And I also got introduced to photography there briefly. And then after high school, I bought my own kiln and took over my mom's ceramic studio. And she made a ceramic studio, took over her sewing room and turned it into a ceramic studio. And started making my portfolio for art school out of, churning away while working at a local factory. I was making tons of ceramics with no guidance, no anything, just.
So you were doing aliens and things. Were you reading science fiction at that point?
Yeah, I've always been a science fiction buff and the fantasy things, as well as science itself. And so that inspired a lot of my making things.
So what about the ceramics at that point? Was it the texture, the making 3D things? Like we talked a little bit, you've never been like a 2D guy, really.
Well, I would doodle and things, but that's where I really excelled at, is in making objects.
And when you were planning something like this piece, do you see it in your head? Do you know how it's going to look when it's done, or does it happen over a process as you're making it?
Well, this piece I made in college. It was after when I moved to LA to go to Otis Parsons, in sophomore year in sculpture, first semester of sculpture, they had a self-portrait assignment. And so I got a bunch of pine shelving from the local hardware store and some plaster wood filler and spackle and spray paint, and that's what I came up with.
So this isn't ceramics, or
No,
this?
that's wood.
Oh, okay.
And it's like this tall. I still have it. That's a more recent picture. That's after I repainted it, and it's been seen a lot through the years.
A number of these pieces are sort of figurative, like the one on the right. Maybe you can tell us what's going on.
Yeah, these is what I made in my mother's sewing room, which I took over, and so it was covered with clay dust. And then I got into bronze casting at the local community college, so that I got a layer of wax all over the plaster, the ceramic dust, and I was able to make just making things. I had no concept of color. It's like, okay, what color haven't I used? Try to get the whole spectrum in that one piece. This piece is only like this big.
So were you making your glazes? Were you buying them?
No, total store bought, low fire. This is Cone 06. And this was one of the more successful ones because I didn't paint it every single color I could think of. It was just one metallic piece. And I've always been interested in, ever since then, the mixing of the organic shapes and the metallic finish, whether it's glazes or over glazes. That's a reoccurring thing. There I am.
All right.
With hair.
The mustache. Let's hear it for the mustache. The 90s, you were where now?
In downtown Los Angeles. I had graduated from art school in 1987, and I had to decide between getting a car or getting a loft. I could only afford one or the other. So I chose the loft in downtown LA, because that's what you do when you're an artist. You get a loft in downtown. It was a lot different downtown then, in the late 80s and early 90s, than it is now. A lot of cheap space, and it was just warehouses that were recently converted. It wasn't legal yet. They hadn't made the whole legal loft thing. It was just taking over warehouses in the beginning.
Back then, in the Arts District, there were people paying 25 cents a square foot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And getting thousands of foot lofts.
Yeah, huge lofts. And so I was living there. This was one of the first buildings to actually go legit. I moved into. It was a 500 Bellino right next to the 4th Street Bridge, LA River. And it was actually legal for us to live there. And I was there until the owner of the building caught me welding on his wooden building on the wooden floor, 3rd floor. But I had a cup of water there. Every time the floor caught fire, I would put it out. I was very safe. So
it's so funny. I'm going to just do a little aside here, because, and we're going to get into sort of finances and things later, but this is before a lot of things came through for your family. So you were like the struggling artist. You couldn't decide between a car and a loft. So
yeah, I was hustling before the .com boom, before Dad's career took off.
So you were one of us. He was one of us. He still is, but
yeah.
All right, so let's see what this mustache produced. All right.
Yeah, this is stuff. These are things I actually dug out of my closet and took pictures of them, because the pictures I have are all film, and who knows where they are. This is a giant teapot. I made all these teapots, and like this one's this big. It's a big, huge thing. And that's the lid, and that's the spout, and there's the handle. And I was really into lusters, because I didn't know any better. Because I had started at college, I got this job as a jewelry designer. They had this little job board, and I went there, and somebody wanted ceramic earrings. It was the thing in the 80s to have these ceramic cottage-made costume jewelry, and we would sneak into department stores like Macy's and Broadway and take pictures of the without them looking, because apparently that's frowned upon, knocking off the cottage stuff. And then they'd fly me to Taiwan, where I teach people how to make them, and They were selling in Broadway and things, but we would sell them for half the price of what our competition was. And,
Capitalism.
right. So, but with that, the thing is, to do that, the investors I was just kind of coming up with the designs and things, but someone else was doing the whole business side of it. And so they would buy me the test kiln and the glazes, and the luster was the thing, these halo effects, and that's all that color, and the gold, of course, that's all overglaze, which is stuff you put on over the glaze.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge difference between this and the early stuff that was sort of almost paint-like the way you're using it.
But that's how I got the subtleties, because I didn't know about reduction firing, and this is all tone 5, and so that's how the jewelry work kind of affected. Then I was using all these samples. I would order, I need more samples. What, for these tiny little jewelries? Here I am painting this big. So that kind of informed my work. I got all sparkly and shiny, and so that I don't do that anymore.
All right. So now we're up to the 2000. I will say Mark had a lot of photos, and I sort of tried to narrow it down to 2 or 3 for each decade that I thought would work. And here we have the newer, more modern mustache. All right.
Yeah, this is also did metal work.
Yeah. So when I met Mark, I knew him as, so the ceramics was all new to me. I knew you as a metal guy, and you were doing metal paint, metal drawing, and big installation pieces. So now we're getting into that work.
Yeah, I go back and forth. It's like a dichotomy, my ceramics and metal. And I would put away the kiln and got into, I learned how to weld in college. That's one of the things to do. Because by the time I finally went to college, Otis had this wonderful ceramics department, but I wasn't interested in ceramics anymore because I kind of burnt out on it. And they had a bronze casting facility there, which I was into from the community college, and the welding, which is something I had never done. So I learned how to do that, and I got into that, just exploring new stuff. And so that's where I acquired the interest in the metal. But then afterwards, when I finally moved to a place where I could weld legally without pissing off the owner, I would make from furniture to mixed media things. But this is a life-size piece I made with that's the face of that piece, and there's a bronze on top.
Did you work concurrently, or did you do? Because to me, one is very
I like it's a very strange dichotomy, because the clay is, of course, it's moist and quiet, but the metal is hot and sharp and loud. But the clay is also very patient. You have to wait for stuff to dry, wait for the kiln to heat up, and it's a one-shot thing. It either works or it doesn't. It's either broken or it. But with metal, it's very forgiving. You could work on it, and up to the last minute, then it's done. You don't have to then fire it or then cross your fingers and hope it makes it. It's very immediate, and it's a lot easier to work with in a lot of ways. But it also comes in stock sizes, so that's another difference. You're starting out with perfect shapes, perfectly straight, perfectly flat, and then you're warping them. But with clay, you're starting, you try to make it go the opposite direction. So I like working with.
Is one more meditative to you, or is there a relaxation or an adrenaline for both?
The clay is probably more meditative because it does take patience, and there's drying time, and I can go on forever, all the differences, the pros and the cons, and how they compare and contrast the two mediums. This is another piece. I still have both of these pieces. This is a recurring theme: the head and the hand, the self-portrait, the perception and manipulation. That idea. This piece is probably like 5 feet tall, and that one's about the same height. And I like bending the metal and evoking the shape without having to fill in the whole form. And another thing with ceramics, I found myself doing the metallic thing and getting more and more fragile looking and long shapes, and things kept breaking, and the glaze stuff. I thought, wait, to attain the forms I'm looking for, I got to go to metal, because then you could get really thin and really delicate, and then it could fall over, and if it breaks, you just weld it back together, and you don't have to.
And for things like this, did you do sketches ahead of time?
Not usually. When I'm making something really big, or I have then of course you can't just wing it. But I think usually when I work with the piece, I have this idea, like I'm going to make a head and a hand, But then I really work intuitively, and I just keep adding material till I think it's enough, or put a bunch of stuff down and then start taking stuff away,
Because
to
like
make
this
the
one to me
form.
seems like pretty top heavy. So do you have to work all that in?
Yeah, I would just work on until it balances. It's like, oh, it's kind of flimsy. Let's put another piece of metal in there, or it's top heavy. Let's cut some stuff out. And visually, it may look top heavy, but you use thicker material down on the bottom, and then at the top, it's more voluminous, but it's all thin metal, and it's mostly empty space. But it describes a shape that really isn't there.
All right. And this stuff I had never seen. And this chair on the left, I love this chair. I would buy this chair now if I could afford it. So let's talk about this, because this work is so much more. I mean, if you compare this to this looks really rough and sharp and uninviting in a way.
Yeah.
I'll say. And this stuff is so smooth and beautiful.
Yeah, this is wood and upholstery, and I would design. This was designed on the computer. Of course, I was well into the whole Macintosh revolution, and so this piece I would design it and have it cut out, and I could make mock-ups out of cheap wood just to test it, because I'm into chairs. I want them to look cool, but I also want them to be comfortable. The idea of the artsy chair that you can't really sit in, I don't like that idea. So I want it to look like it's not comfortable, but it is comfortable. And so I made a lot of different chairs based upon this theme, bigger ones and smaller ones. But this is just wood, and I had an upholsterer guy do the upholstery for me. And I would do these I didn't really know how to go about it, but I wanted to make prototypes and hopefully get a commission for me. Have someone say, "Oh, make me a set of these, or make me a couch." Or, this is kind of modular, so I could make the whole thing bigger or wider. Or there were just like prototypes that I can then show people and hopefully generate work to make it from scratch. I wasn't interested in selling this as a piece. It was more of a idea that I could generate commissions to make custom furniture. I did a few pieces, but I didn't really. Went to a few shows. Would have these. I would make these, photograph them, and put them out. And I did get a few commissions, but I didn't really pursue it that much. I really needed a representation or something.
Yeah, furniture, you need reps, you need a showroom.
Yeah, and I kind of explored that, but it just didn't work out. I forget why. It's a long time ago. But this piece, I made several of these, and I still have some of the carcasses, the raw piece, because this is MDF. It's fiberboard. It's just laminated. I made a metal form, and I would cut the piece out of this cross-shaped piece, and I cut it out of 1/8" MDF, medium density fiberboard, and I would soak them in water, and they get all limp, and then I would put it around the form and take a bunch of spring clamps and clamp it to the form and let it dry, and then take it off, and then keep doing that until I had all these dry forms. And then I would put glue in between, and then glue them all together again, and then clamp them. I'd have pictures, I don't know if you got it, of all the spring clamps all around at every edge of these things. And then I still have this piece, because then I would sand it and sand the hell out of it and cover it with resin and Bondo and resin. And I had to reinforce it since it was just MDF. I put in steel reinforcements. And then I made it and I thought, I'm never going to do this again. That was way too hard.
That seems like a lot of work.
So I would make, but I did a bunch of, since I made it easy to make the carcass, the right form, I would then just upholster that, take that and just cover it with batting and upholstery. And some of those I sold, and get rid of them in there. I could revisit that, or maybe make it out of metal. I thought maybe make it out of sheet metal and bend it the similar way and weld it together. But the thing is, I did it. And then I moved on. I was busy doing the next idea.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of ceramics you could make in the time that this.
Or make this out of ceramic. That would be nice. But right now, it's just polished resin. That's what it is.
All right.
We got a workshop coming up with making furniture.
Yeah, I could. Yeah. And this is a piece I made for my niece. It's like a little chair, little pedal chair. And it's like this big. It's like a little thing. And it was another prototype. I'd make them small so I could take a picture of it and not really tell what the size was. So if you want me to commission you one, I'll make it as big as you want. But that was just a little size thing. I didn't learn how to do upholstery. I just gave that to someone to do that. And this is a copper fish. I had this idea to make a big fish, but I wanted to explore the form a little. So I made a little one out of copper. That piece is only like this big, and it's on this big base that stands, to bring it up to eye level.
And the finish on the copper?
That's just patina. It's just the copper that I covered it with ammonia and chemicals to turn it green.
All right.
Okay, this is a piece that I did more recently. This is when one of my metal drawings. This is after I lost my big studio, and I went into. I rented another studio when I was living in downtown LA, and I had a public art piece that got delayed a year. So I had rented the studio, I had all my equipment in it, and I was living in an apartment in downtown then. I was used to living in this big loft with a drive-in. I could just drive right into my studio. It was really cool. We had a nice garden in the back alley. It was great, but that only lasted like 7 years or so. But
only lasted 7 years.
And it went through a lot of iterations. Those are fun times. But but then towards the end, I lived in a couple apartments in like 5th and Spring, like a real urban experience. And this was after LA had developed where you can actually live there. It wasn't all derelict storefronts. But anyway, I had something to do with the studio. So I came up with an assignment to make metal drawings. So I had all these sketchbooks before Macintosh changed my life. I used to do sketchbooks with pen and ink and everything. So I had as a bank of ideas. I would just go through it and find a good drawing or a sketch, and then I would draw it on metal and then cut the metal with a plasma cutter and then bring it 2D. But I had a set of criteria because I was looking for make a one body of work that it would then show as a piece. So I had to have criteria parameters, which was they couldn't be any bigger than this, like 2 by 3, and they had to be wall hangings. And I didn't want to use pigment. I would just want to use either polished or patinaed or corroded metal, any metal like zinc, and I used bronze and copper and mostly steel. And then I would just make, some of them were just this big, other ones got bigger, but this is called
So this looks, I'm sorry.
Zeitgeist Overdrive. Is that what that is?
So, I mean, it looks like hard edge cutting, and then the smaller pieces almost look like they were like mercury, like they were dropped in. So how did you get the two different surfaces?
Those are steel figures. I took a piece of sheet metal and I just put 2 lines on it. So I had this ever growing, 2 angles. so I could dictate the size. So I can get bigger and bigger. So I would draw these with my chalk, draw out these little figures, come in and cut them out with the plasma cutter, and then take the whole thing or cut out and I twist, I put them around in a spiral, and I would braise bronze on it. I'd take a torch, heat it up, and just melt bronze onto the plate metal to the point where they're all covered with bronze, and you get that lumpy look, because I didn't want to bother casting them. I wanted to keep it. That was another criteria. I didn't want to get too intricate, no like laser cutting or things. I wanted to stay immediate and what I could do with the plasma cutter. So I couldn't get too detailed and too into it. So it kept it a certain amount of immediacy and impressionist type of a look to it. And then I had to figure out how to do the back. It didn't look like enough just sitting there, it looked kind of naked. So I would just be making it up as I go along. I had no idea that this creature would be on top there. It was sort of like some god figure, and these are like evolution of people or society. I don't know. It's just some vague idea that and I call it zeitgeist overdrive. I want to do another one only bigger. This one's only this big, and I want to do a bigger. Yeah, these are more the metal drawing era. This is eye human or something, human eye, I forget what it was. But that's just the male and female and eye thing. And that's about duality. I think this is all sharp down below, and there's more petal-like things up above. And the pupil, I took a piece of copper and I made a hemisphere out of it, and then I zinc plated it. And they gave it a mirror finish. So this is I made a bunch of these little figures. It's like this big, and once again, that's using the bronze coating the steel plate, and that's more of a bronze and steel. I just melt the bronze onto the steel plate and then polish it up.
And did you do any studying of how the metals are going to interact and what's going to work, or did you just go at it?
It was an experiment. I found out. I got it to turn purple at one point. I got this bright purple. I don't know how to recreate that, and it's probably really toxic, but somehow. I would just experiment and come up with stuff, and it would get really beautiful things. But then oxygen is not your friend when you're working with metal. It eventually tarnish. So I get these rainbow of colors, but once it cooled off and sat around for a couple of days, it would start to tarnish. So I'd have to come up with ways to prevent that.
When I was a kid, and we had somebody had given me, this little chemical set when I was a kid, which was so unsafe because we would just take the little thing and use the Bunsen burner and light everything on fire to see what color it was, and all that stuff was toxic.
Yeah,
But we had to see it's sparkling, it's turning the flame green. It's
okay, this is the metal drawing. I would start out with the drawing. And this goes through the various stages. This is called Call and Response. It's the name of the piece. It's only like this big.
So I think I had seen this. You had the show in the apartment in downtown LA, and you had a whole series that matched size-wise, pretty much.
Yeah, that was part of the series. And here's the close-up. Kind of jittery there. So that's how you can get real impressionist, because I was forced to, with a plasma cutter, you can't get too detailed. And I kept thinking, well, I can etch it and acid it. And then I thought, no, you got to keep it intuitive and expressionist. So that was one of the criteria I had to work within. So this is Fate Bait, which is a piece I did for, there was a...
Well, first, how big is this?
It's like 11 feet tall. This is a full-size figure. That's my size. And this is a fish. I did this for the Jules Verne. They had a big convention thing, big art party where they have in downtown LA. It was at the place where they do the Academy Awards. They commissioned it. It was a freebie. They didn't pay me anything, but it gave me, the deal exposure. I got exposed. So, but it gave me a deadline and the impetus. So I really went to town, and I did a bunch of drawings. I knew what it was going to look like, but how do you get this thing to balance on its tail? I don't know. You just do it till it works.
So you were on 7th Street, I think, at this point, right?
6th Street. Yeah.
6th. And I remember, I didn't know you that well at this point, but I remember going, because you did a call. You needed people to just come and hold things so you could weld, and going to your studio and seeing this piece and just being so amazed by how big it was. It's quite impressive. So, and this is it in
Pershing Square.
Pershing Square.
Yeah.
Right, and then we have another one that's even bigger.
Okay, yeah, that's the big. It's a big piece. This one I actually had to plan out, and so this is it's a wooden base, and it's all steel construction with aluminum, perforated aluminum on the top, and then you'd get the moire pattern. This doesn't show it very well, but yeah, that's the moire pattern. And as you walk by, it would activate, so it's like animated, but it was just by the parallax. So it was moving, but it was the viewer's motion that activated it. So it would get all like a moire, it would change. And this was just 12 pieces that fit together and interlocked, and it was held together by one bolt in the middle. And it would just slide up there, and they all work together.
Wow. And where is it now?
I still have it. I'm going to set it up again.
Right out in front.
Oh, it had built-in music too. I had speakers in there and lights and stuff. So at night it would be a stage. We had performers coming, and it would be blasting music the whole time. And so
that's great. Yeah, I had no idea about these gigantic pieces before. All right, so this is now, we're getting a little more modern. So this is the stuff that when I see around, like there's certain people, like Gary's ceramics I can look at, I know that's him. I see this stuff, I know that's you. So why don't you talk about how you're approaching ceramics now? And we're gonna go through a number of things, but this whole idea of mixing color in ceramics as opposed to firing them and putting glazes on.
Yeah, this was a solution. I've been doing this for many years, and I did various iterations of it. But when the art tour, when I moved here, there was the art tours, and I wanted to come up with something that I could, first of all, that was sellable, but that didn't take too much effort, and I could, but it had to be interesting enough and distinctive. So with this method, I only had to fire it once because you didn't have to glaze it, and it held my interest because each one was different. It was like a discovery. You put this, you go through the motions, but then when you scrape off the outer coating, the muddy coating of the clay to reveal the final design after you make the thing, it's always a surprise, and so that's what kept it obsessive. Oh, what's this one? But what if I did this?
So for people like me that know nothing about ceramics, are you coloring the clay before you mix it in? Are they clays from different places?
Yeah,
different colors?
This one is the actual natural color of the clays. You can get clay in a lot of different natural colors, depending on the minerals involved. And then I wanted just to add accents of pigmented clay, and that was, at the time, it's kind of hard to mix the pigment into the clay. It takes a lot of work, and the pigment's kind of expensive. So there's a reason people just don't work in colored clay, because most of your pigment, expensive pigment, isn't even seen, because so it's easier just to paint it afterwards. But in order to get this design, that doesn't work. You got to have the whole clay, because this design goes all the way through the clay. It's inside. So as you scrape it away, it keeps changes. It gradually shifts. And I'm giving a workshop on how to do this coming up next month. If you want to sign up, we have 3 more slots left. But I divulge the secrets of my process of this. But it's a lot like geology. You deposit the layers flat lying, and then you mess them up, and then you erode it away, and there you
I remember scratch boards when I was a kid. You'd go down, there'd be different layers. All right, and here we are current.
Yeah, first thing I did this for Rollo's, the Burning of the Devil party, the Waymo. Yeah. So this is when I first moved here in 2020. He was having that show, so he said, "Mark, make something burn." So I made this devil thing out of wood, and I made it out of metal, out of steel, and I put in piping and had a tank of propane there, and it would just like turn it on and light it and run away, and it would. So that was. He still has it. Every once in a while, he'll fire it up. This is just more of the Narikomi things. These are on sale at the gallery right now. Go to Juniper Arts. This is the fungoid planter series that another aspect, when I'm not doing the Narikomi, I do this. I just like the form, and it kind of looks like mushrooms or toadstools.
And is this glazed or painted?
Yeah, that's glazed. Yeah, I use the glaze. And this is like a water dish built in. This one, that's a water tank. It's got some holes there where you put the water in, and hopefully your plants, eventually when they have the roots that go down that far, you can just water it through the bottom and have the water soak up. Because when they get really, when these things get big enough, you can't even get in there to water it. So you have to water it from down there. But that's that idea. And these really sell. I made lots of these, and I sold most of them.
Now we're going to talk about the other things you do up here, which is helping put the whole community together. So first, obviously, without going into a lot of detail, there's some money behind this. So why don't you explain sort of your dad and...
Yeah, my dad, while I was struggling in Los Angeles, trying to make a living as an art/designer, my dad was he had moved to Chicago to work for a small company, a startup called US Robotics, because my father he was one of the pioneers of the brand new field in the 70s when he started working into data communications, which, people would ask me, "What does your daddy do?" So I said, "Daddy, what is it that you do?" He's like, "Oh, I make it. So I let computers talk to each other over phone lines." I was like, "Huh?" Because at the time, remember, you go to the cashier and you give them your credit card, and they have to call up someone else who's looking at another computer screen somewhere else. There was a huge bottleneck in the flow of money, and there was a lot of pressure to solve that. And at first, you'd have the modem where you just stick the phone in it, and it would. And but then they would develop. So at that time, he got into the field when it was at that level. But then he's continued to develop it, and he kind of benefited from the .com boom, and he's the one that figured out how to make it go to 56K when it was at 14 baud, whatever the speed of the modem. And of course now it's all obsolete, but at the time he got it to do that. And he's also got a good deal with Texas Instruments, which was the biggest producers of chips, and he was a Texan. And he was working for these guys in Chicago, and they needed to get the special deal with Texas Instrument. So they sent my dad down there with his Texas drawl, and and he kind of played it up and was able to get this special deal so they can get their chip at a cheaper rate than all the competitors. So that was one of the reasons that U.S. robotics really took off, because of my dad. And but he also wisely invested the money and was able to parlay it, and through the insane tax laws we had, he was able to accumulate it to the degree where he decided he would start a family foundation, just because being a Republican, he didn't want the government to get any of his money. So he came up, it started off as a tax dodge, but then it developed, this is in the mid-90s, then it developed as a family thing. So we would get together like once or twice a year and meet and figure out how to get rid of the funds. And it kept growing, and as that became successful, and it did help our family, which is from all parts of the country and all parts of the political spectrum. It helped us unify us as a family. It was a big point, and of course it kept growing. And as his wealth continued to grow, long after the modem was obsolete, he was able to put it into the foundation, but he kept it to at first gradually exposed us. He knew better than just give us, all this money. So he taught us. We were just started off as advisory board members, and we get a little chunk of money. We get to distribute our own, and we got more and more into it. And then the kids took over, and of course he passed away in 2019, which so that allowed me to have enough money to buy my own house. Finally, I could get that down payment, and that's when I moved out here. But I was in Pomona then. He died, because I briefly moved to Pomona. I was in downtown LA, but I had the big black diamond thing, and I couldn't leave right away. So I was stuck in these apartments and working in the other apartment, riding my bicycle through Skid Row to get to my metal shop. So I went to Pomona because I was on the board of directors of the American Museum of Ceramic Art, which I was a big supporter of, and I still am. And they have the largest collection of ceramic art, fine art, ceramics, not archaeology. They do have production pottery and things, but it's mostly sculpture. And I got really involved with that. So I moved to Pomona, and I remember when Rollo lived there, it was an arts town, because wherever Rollo goes, the art scene explodes. But I had missed him. He had moved on, and so I moved to Pomona because of MoCA, and they have not just a museum, they have a ceramic studio, a very big one. And so I became a member, so I really got involved in the Cone 10 firing, and hung out with all the purists. It's got to be Cone 10, and I would...
Good name for a band.
Yeah, Cone 10. Yeah, that's right. So I was able to get into that, but I couldn't really find a community there, because most of the people who worked at MoCA they commuted there from all over, and I didn't really find the art scene I wanted. So I would be coming out here, because Rollo had moved out here. So I remember going to his art trap. I was going to have a show out here with another friend of mine, and so my social scene started to develop over in Joshua Tree. And then when the pandemic hit, I had already decided to move out here. Then the pandemic kind of slowed me down, but I kind of moved here during the pandemic. I just bought a pickup truck and just moved myself, just driving back and forth. I'm going home. Yes, officer, I'm going home. Either way, because I had two homes. So I had rented a house in Pomona, and it was cheaper than a one-room apartment in downtown LA. I got a whole house with a lawn, and that included pool service and lawn service, and for like less than $3,000 a month. So it's like, wow. But it didn't have the social scene. After my father died, I didn't think I was going to get very much, because I thought our trust funds was all I was going to get. But we got a little more, so I was able to buy a house. And then back to the foundation, that when we really got active and the kids took over the foundation, and I needed some help distributing money. So I called my friend Cheyenne, who had just started AHA projects. And I had all this money to give away. I didn't want to do it by myself. So I called Cheyenne because back when I was living downtown, when we first started giving, there was this thing called Art Share. It was artists. They had a theater, a gallery, and housing for artists up above. So, and it was going broke, and it was really corrupt. And so my friend Rick Robertson took it over, kicked everyone off the board. This is like 2015 or something. And then he took me on board and a couple of his other friends, and I was able to give, this is when the Do Foundation just started happening, and that was one of my first big donations, was to get the Art Share off the ground. And the first thing we did was hire Cheyenne to be the director. And so she was able to take it on board, and in like 5 years, it was in the black and thriving. And she really proved herself there. So when I needed some help here, I needed advice and a gatekeeper and someone to who kind of knew. She's an expert in the nonprofit.
So
world.
what's for people looking, what's the difference between Do and AHA?
Well, the Do Foundation has been around a lot longer, and that's taken care of by a company called Your Philanthropy in Texas, and that's the family foundation. And then, so with AHA, it's with the donor advised fund, because my mother started, instead of giving to the foundation, she would give to each one of us kids, because the kids, we were so very different in our giving patterns. The foundation is kind of it's like 4 sub foundations like lumped together. So I would give to the arts and things, and my sister, she's into like more nature stuff, and my mom's into like medical stuff. So it wasn't like this cohesive entity. So Mom decided to start these, and the DAFs became a thing. One more way for the billionaires to keep their money out of government's hands. So we got several $1 million at each of us kids, but it comes like pre-donated. so it's we don't have to go through any of that legal stuff. We can just go online and pick a nonprofit and send money. But I was able to, with AHA, I was able just to give money to them and have them distribute it. And they bought this building, for instance. And
so let's go to that. So these are your entities, right? So you have Juniper Arts, Juniper Clay Shop, and the residency. Mark Walsh Design. So these are all commercial interests.
Yeah. I started these because they're self-serving. I'm benefiting. I mean, Juniper Arts sells my work, and I rent space and buy my clay from Juniper Clay Shop, but buy it with money that, and they're both becoming successful. And we have the Artists in Residence, which are still trying to get off the ground, but one thing at a time. And so for that, we were hopefully having guest artists come in and using the shop, getting 24/7 access to their air-conditioned shop with its built-in clay shop and glazes, and we got our own kilns, and we have a house they can stay in. And we've had a couple people do that, but I haven't really promoted that yet. That's the next thing. We got to get that up and running.
All right. And then these are all AHA projects.
Yeah. And this is different ways that we're enhancing the art scene in Joshua Tree. And it's like I said, I'm not trying to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. I mean, I'm surrounded by silk here, real good silk. And all I have to do is help whatever is already happening, just enhance that. So I'm looking for things that are already kind of built and planned, and the vision's there. It just needs a little fuel to get it going, and just needs a little help. I'm trying not to dictate what I want. Oh, I think you should have an opera house, and this is going to be, you know. I'm trying to like listen and get what people want and try to make it happen for them. And you know, it seems to be working.
So when we were talking yesterday, you were sort of loosely comparing this to the downtown, the art scene. Like there, even though that was the city with 1 million people around, the arts district was still like a small town, just like this. And you were doing the same sort of thing. You had a maker space there, sort of like you do here. So why don't you talk about why community is important to you? Because as we were talking yesterday, you were somebody who could just sit at home and make clay, but you decide to give back, you decide to help build. You're really influential as far as making a name for the whole high desert here as an arts place now. So why not just sit at home and watch Maury Povich and eat bonbons?
Well, you know, I've been single my whole life, you know, so I don't really have the family that, you know, my dad could dedicate himself to his family and making sure that they could prosper beyond his lifetime and all that. But for me, my family is the people around me, and you know, I kind of generate my own family with my own connections and all. So that's one aspect that I have nothing better to do with the money. And I also want to. I'm a socialist at heart, you know. I think into distributing the wealth and getting it out there, and it shouldn't be tied up in some trust fund. I'm trying to get it out there, but not in a way where I'm just doing it for my own self, or like some vanity project that's going to disappear when I do. I'm trying to generate actual viable business that can then keep functioning on its own without constant influx of money. That's kind of one goal, is to get things up and running and going so that it doesn't require me. I think there's enough money coming in here through the tourists, as well as new homeowners and people building houses and things, that it can sustain it. And and we have the talent of the artists and the people living here who can provide the art, but sometimes you just need to connect the two somehow. You know, you got this big flow of money and you got these other artists producing artwork, but sometimes they don't quite connect. Mm-hmm. So places like the High Desert Artists and the Art Queen and other, you know, that's my nonprofit venue, that arm of what I'm doing. And then there's a profitable one. I actually want to make a business that I can profit off of, and I can. So of course I'm not using the foundation money for my own business. I got, you know, I got to keep them separate, so that it's not too self-serving. There's laws against that. So I'm
laws are so last administration.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I just want to go back here. If anybody, I would think in a small town like that it's sort of an issue of people coming up and going, I need $5,000. I need this. I need that, which sometimes you give, but there is a system to it. That's where Cheyenne comes in. Cheyenne is the Great Wall of giving. And why don't you talk about that people should not walk up to you and say, hey, I have an idea, but no plan. Can I have $5,000?
Yeah, I don't like that situation. Because for every person you give money to, there's countless other people that you could have given it to and you didn't, you know. So it's kind of it's not a pleasant situation at all times, because you can't give to everybody. And so I wanted to have her be the gateway. And so if anyone wants a donation and I send them to Cheyenne, they don't think that I'm just blowing you off, because I only do that if I'm interested in giving you. If I, so that's not me blowing you off. That's the path to get a donation from her, and she knows how to do it. And she has no problem saying no, although she's really good at it. And I mean, she does consulting for nonprofits, and she'll slash her budget to the bone, and you'll thank her for it because she's so nice about it.
She's very good at looking and seeing if something has potential.
Yeah, and so she doesn't string people along, and she tells it how it is, but she's very nice about it, and very knowledgeable and sensible.
All right, so if anybody wants to find out AHA projects or the Do Foundation, and they both have websites. All right, well, thank you for everything you're doing up here in the high desert. You've really made a difference to everybody up here. And it's early in the year, but it's never too early to buy Mark ceramics for Christmas gifts for next year. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you for coming.